This is Inspirational Women, a weekly series shining the spotlight on female trailblazers making a true difference in our community. Once again, here is Kate Daniels.
Erin Rollins is certainly an inspirational woman. She's the embodiment of overcoming huge obstacles multiple times following a horrific crash, being hit by a drunk driver. As we hear Erin's story on Father's Day, it's a message for every day, really. A message for every single person to plan well in advance what they will do should they decide to drink or drug and drive. Erin's is a convicting story. Erin Rollins, good morning. Thank you so greatly for being with us today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
I am really grateful to have this opportunity. We're seeing each other on Zoom, even though no one else gets to see you. But I have to say, you look so radiant. You are beautiful. And I just am in awe of how you look. Saying this because like 10 and a half years ago, you were in such a devastating crash that the officers first to the scene thought there can't be any survivors. And here you are,
Yes.
just so beautiful and so alive.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And that was a horrific time, wasn't it?
It was a very horrific time, very confusing time. I think people don't realize the impact that they have on not only the victim themselves, because I was the only one driving in my vehicle. The drunk driver was the only one in her vehicle, which thank God we were the only two. However, my sister, she's a psychologist, and she told me this after. She said, Erin, you're the only physical victim, but there are hundreds of emotional victims, people who love you, friends and family, doctors who put you back together, therapists, like clinical psychologists, just anyone that I have seen in order to recuperate, which has been so many. They've all been impacted in some way by my story. And then specifically my inner circle, I have like 7 best friends, relationships are the most important thing to me in this life. And then I have my outer circle, I have other friends, and we're a part of a church group. And so there's so many people from 3 different states that found out about my crash because I lived in Chicago for my whole adult life. And then I moved to Milwaukee after my undergrad to intern with the church there, moved back for grad school at Northwestern, and then I moved to Virginia for my last quarter of grad school. And I had officially graduated actually a year and a few months before my crash. So there were so many people just impacted by the story and praying for me. Thankfully, I had a lot of support. But yeah, people think like it's just the victim or just the immediate family, but it just doesn't work that way. Trauma doesn't work that way.
And thank you for saying that, because I think we probably, unless we are directly impacted or have a connection as your circles have had, we don't think of that. We only think of perhaps there being the one victim. And honestly, I can't say that maybe this is a harsh attitude, but I don't think of the drunk driver, as being a victim. I mean, they
They're
made
not.
that. They're not.
But they might have injuries too.
Well, in fact, I read in your story that that woman was actually in the same hospital room or in the ER area right next to you.
Yeah. So the crazy thing about trauma is that, people's first reaction to something like this is, well, why didn't you see her? Or did you see her coming? They want to know all these details. And literally what happens when your body is in shock is that it stops making memories and it stops vital like organ function to keep you alive. So as a woman, it'll stop your period because you don't need to reproduce to stay alive. And so when you're in physical and emotional shock, and so first of all, no, I did not see her coming. She was driving the wrong way down the expressway, and on the WGN video, there was a curve. So she hit me right at the blind spot because she would have been traveling like this, and I wouldn't have seen her until she was on top of me, which is literally what my trauma tells me. Every time even my husband gets in my face and I'm not expecting him, I flinch to this day because I'm not that's my biggest trauma, is that you're in a position at whatever point I did see her headlights. There was nothing I could do except for maybe turn my wheel slightly to the right. And so she hit me more head on the left, but still head on. So all of my spinal injuries and my abdominal injuries are more severe on the left side. And
Mm.
so, people mean well, but when they ask questions like that, you're like, are you if I saw her, I would have done more. But in that split second
Yeah.
that I saw her right when she was on top of me, there's only so many choices you can make. And whatever choice I made was obviously the right one because
And
I'm still here today.
yes.
Um, Also, I give a lot of credit to God because, as you said, the state trooper, I'm making a documentary as well. And so I've been interviewing as many people as involved as possible because I want to share my story. I want to positively impact people. I want to share about the medical miracles that have happened. I want to share my personal story. I want to advocate against, impaired driving. He was very kind to let me interview him without it necessarily being for the documentary. And he's, like you said, he told me, he said, in my 17 years of being a trooper, I've walked onto a lot of scenes. And the moment I walked onto yours, my first thought was, this is a double fatal. I got in the ambulance. That's my first memory. So, no, I don't have any memory of the crash. Some emotional memories have come back years later of how I felt when I was in the car, but I don't have a visual because your body protects you.
Hmm.
And basically, in the ambulance, the paramedic said, you know your name, they're checking for brain injuries and spinal cord injuries and everything, and said my name, and he said, people don't survive crashes like this. You're really lucky to be alive. And in that moment, I'm thinking, like, I don't even know where I'm at. Am I in a third dimension? Am I in a dream? Am I alive? Like, I had no idea where I was. I was in so much pain I could barely speak. And then I get to the hospital, and I'm in and out of consciousness, by the way, because again, your body's protecting you. And I found out later that they had tried to do an IV in the ambulance to curb some of the pain, but they couldn't get to my vein. I get to the hospital, but it's all very traumatic because your body wants to respond. Your body wants to either fight, flee, or freeze, and you're forced to freeze in a situation like I was in, right? So I'm in the room. I wake up again, is how it felt, and I see the state trooper standing at the end of my gurney, and I am completely terrified because, mind you, I have no idea where I'm at, what happened to me, and why I'm here. And I think he saw the sheer terror on my face, and so he asked me my name, told him. He said, do you know what happened to you? I shook my head no. He said, I am so sorry, Miss Massey. That's my maiden name. You are lucky to be alive. And then he walked to my left. I remember it specifically. He walked a few feet to my left, and I knew there was a girl or a woman in the bed next to me. We were separated by a curtain because I had heard her moaning in pain. Because when you're in so much pain, you're just making all sorts of noises because your body has to get the energy out, right? So I was hearing my own moaning as if it was far away. So I immediately had compassion for her because I'm like, oh, what happened to her? And I didn't look at her because I didn't want her to feel embarrassed, or, you don't want someone staring at you when you're in the hospital and the worst moment of your life. So I just kind of kept looking forward, and I heard him say, look to the woman to your right. That's the woman you hit. My brain was like, oh my gosh, this is too much to handle. Trauma, trauma, trauma. And I literally do not remember anything about her after that. And he told me he began to lecture her about her choices because she, at that moment, had no remorse, and she was very, very drunk. She urinated on herself. And I think from his perspective, she was very much worried about herself, and not necessarily like, oh my gosh, how is the person that I hurt? But
Yeah.
yeah, so that was very traumatic. My family came, they had to listen to her for hours until they took me to surgery, and they had to cope with their own feelings of anger and helplessness because you can't do anything other than be there for your loved one.
Yes. And I can appreciate there being so much anger because when a person decides to get in their car after they have had too many drinks or have had some sort of drug put in their system, and they get in their car thinking they can drive and then create this kind of havoc, this kind of pain inflicted, as you said, it wasn't just you, your parents, your sister, they had to be there to hear this too. Like, it's unbelievable.
And, I thought about this a lot, and I'm still trying to figure out how I would go about doing this. But one thing I love about MAD is that they fight for victims, and they fight through the law. They fight in any way necessary through emotional support, just financial, helping connect me with victims' compensation, which was extremely helpful because I was out of a job. Luckily, I also had family to move in with, but some people don't have that.
MAD does have that kind of help available for friends and family members, right?
Yeah, so anyone can call at any time, 1-877 MAD HELP. And you can also go online, which is what I did, and I found my local MAD branch and reach out to the individual there, and then they'll connect you with a victim advocate. So I went online, found my local MAD branch, which is no longer there. It was closest to where I was living. And a victim advocate came out with her trainee, Karen, who ended up being my victim advocate. And that's how I was connected to MAD. And then she came to every court date. She advocated for me with the state's attorney. She told me about victims' compensation, which was extremely helpful, as I said, because I wasn't working. And so victims' compensation is a fund that hopefully we won't lose, but it's a fund for victims of crimes and it helps them to support themselves, right? So the money goes towards you're not working, you're not having an income. How do I pay my bills? How do I pay my rent? This could be for a mom who loses their child to a drunk driver, or a parent who loses their, son to an impaired driver, or a sister. It can go to someone who is like the legal guardian of someone who was killed so they can pay bills, or to themselves. So it was extremely helpful. You were talking about the drunk driver getting in the car, which she was twice the legal limit 3 hours after my crash. And she was 4'10" and a half, I think, and like maybe 105 pounds, so pretty small. And I don't know how much alcohol you need to drink to be that inebriated, but I do know the state trooper also told me, and this is on the police cam, when the police got to her car to see if she was okay, he asked her, "Ma'am, do you know where you are?" "No." "Ma'am, do you know you were just in a car crash?" "No." "Ma'am, do you know where you're coming from?" "No." "Do you know where you're going?" No. She had no clue where she was going. And this is not just the fault of the bar for overserving her, and it's not even just her fault for drinking and getting into a car drunk. In this specific case, she was with a friend who she didn't know very well, but that friend literally dropped her off at her car, knowing she probably could barely walk, and let her drive home. And so, is it her fault for making that bad, terrible choice? Is it partially the fault of the bar for overserving her, the bars? Yes. Is it also the fault of the friend?
Right.
But there are, as far as I know, in my civil and criminal case, there are no laws protecting victims because their friend was complicit in allowing, like literally dropped her off. Not just, "Hey, bye, you're leaving from the bar." Like you don't have any choice in the matter, right? But you're going to physically drive, you're probably inebriated too, to her car, or walk her to her car and let her get in the car and drive away.
Yeah.
How is that okay?
It just is not, which is why I think there are pieces of education around making decisions. You're going to go drinking?
Yes.
Make decisions ahead of time as to what you're going to do. You do not
Yeah.
take your car keys. You plan for an
Yeah.
Uber or whatever.
Yeah. It's just amazing to me how I've read articles and people will say, "Oh, I actually drive better when I have alcohol." Or they'll say things like, "Oh, I have a high alcohol tolerance." And I'm like, scientifically, though, research shows most people's bodies can process one alcoholic beverage an hour. That's one shot of a hard liquor. That's one 5-ounce glass of wine. Most glasses of wine, I believe, are 6 ounces. So if you have 6 ounces, that means it takes your body more than an hour. So if you're going to go to dinner and have 3 glasses of wine or 2 glasses of wine, that's already over 2.5 hours, 3.5 hours, 4 hours that you would need to be at a location just to have a BAC of 0. And so most people think like, "Oh, I'll just have one drink," or "Oh," but if you're not factoring in what you've eaten that day, how much you weigh, how long you're staying at the place, then you really do not know exactly where your body is at any point in time. And so that's why, for me personally, I was not okay with having alcohol at my wedding. Even though it would have been maybe a 2-drink maximum, I was like, "No, I will have champagne because I'm riding in a limo and it's my wedding day." But y'all, no, my conscience was not clear having any sort of alcohol at my wedding. And I'm not saying it's wrong, but when you think about a wedding, people are like, "Oh, they're celebrating, they're having drinks." They're not thinking, "Oh, I've had how many drinks?" If it's an open bar, or like, do open bars even have maximums? It depends on what the bride and the groom pay for, right? So I was
Yes.
like, "Oh, I could do a 1 drink maximum. And I was like, I don't even want to do that. I don't even want to spend my money so other people can drink. Like, I'm just not doing it.
Yeah, understandably. And you were mentioning then having an advocate as you went through the court system. So it's unbelievable. How much time did that take? Because I know what the end result was for this woman and what she got.
It took 2 years, I would say. And the first 6 months I was not able to go, nor was I instructed to go because I was in inpatient rehab. So I was in the hospital for a month, then I was in inpatient rehab for 6 weeks. So that's like 2 different hospitals for 2.5 months. And then I was still barely walking outside of the wheelchair with the walker, but I'm feisty myself. So I was like, nope. The moment I step out of rehab, you are not babying me. I am not sitting in that wheelchair. I don't care if it takes me 30 minutes to walk down the hallway. I am walking with my walker. And I think that kind of determination is the reason I'm walking today because, and not to say that it's wrong, like when I went to court the first time, I rode in the wheelchair for 2 reasons. One, because we parked really far away in a parking garage, and that was a really far walk. It would have taken me all day. And two, because I wanted the drunk driver to see that, yes, I'm walking, but this is not the literal hell that I've been through. And there was so much with all of my surgeries. Like I was sliced front to back. The surgeon basically said, I had 6 teams of surgeons. My plastic surgeon said, Erin, the seatbelt saved your life, but it also sliced your body in half. And I have never in my whole career ever seen an injury like yours. You know why? He tells me to this day, he's like, Erin, you are my one. And he even complimented me because I just had another surgery for a complication that he did not do from another surgery, a nerve transfer. And he's like, Erin, thank you for pushing me. He's like, you're the one patient that has pushed me the most in my medical career. And it's because he invented this amazing technique called the mesh suture, which literally 10 days after the crash, the laparotomy failed. I had holes in my organs. I had a severed artery. I was bleeding internally. I had free flowing fluid. I basically could have died if they hadn't done that surgery first. 10 days later, the first surgery failed. I became septic. I went into septic shock. They barely got in there to fix me, put me back together. And I had to have a colostomy, which thankfully now has been reversed, but I had it for 8 years because of my neurological damage. They weren't sure I'd be able to use the bathroom normally. And so then 5 days after that, my surgeon, Dr. Dumanian, was like, I'm going to try to put you back together. I've never done this before. It's never been done before, but I have this technique. The time is now. Let's do it. I said, fine. I don't care how much pain I'm in. Just try to fix me. And he did. And now he has an FDA approved product, travels all over the world. He's like, Erin, you were my first to do the technique. Now he has the actual product. And I was also his last because the year I had my ostomy reversal, he also had to fix another hole in my abdominal wall from the crash that he's like, I can't fix that because an ostomy is basically a hole in your abdominal wall. So if I fix that, it's going to just open up again because the ostomy has to come out of your abdomen, right? That keeps a lot of cancer patients and or people with Crohn's disease alive and or better quality of life. For me, I didn't have a choice. So then I chose to reverse it and see. I was like, let me just see what happens. And it worked. And he said, yeah, you were the first and the last to receive the technique as it was. And now, like I said, he has a product. And so there's just been a lot of wonderful things with my story too. And now I'm like, wow, like his technique and what he did has now served how many more patients? But every time I see him, he's like, Erin, I've literally never had a patient like you before because they don't survive. They just don't. Like the heart trauma, the holes in your organs, the severed artery, the broken bones. I had like 7 broken ribs, fractured sternum, concussion. My right foot was broken in 3 places. But like the abdominal injuries alone, it was just totally God and I survived. So,
and lots of people praying for you as well. You were saying, yeah,
yes,
it really feels like a miracle. And your strength, your determination. And I say that with a little caution because it's hard for people who maybe don't recover very well to say it's
of course
a challenge.
It's not their fault. Yeah,
no.
They have different journeys.
Yes.
It's not like, oh, look at her. She's so great compared to this person. And it's like, I still have deficits that people don't see. I still self-cath. I still use a straw essentially to urinate. I still have deficits in my legs, so I'm having surgeries. I just had one. I had a nerve transfer to see if I could recover function and sensation, but I was 5 years too late. The surgeon did it anyways because I was like, let me just try.
Yeah.
And he did a great job, but sometimes the nerves get a little, confused. And so it formed this really painful neuroma, which is essentially nerve tissue that's like a ball on top of the nerve. So it causes horrible nerve pain. And then for me, it caused an uncommon presentation. I'm like, Dr. Dumanian, all my surgeons, I'm like, when am I ever the normal? When? Literally when? And I was like, please, can you fix it? And he's like, well, neuromas are usually deep inside the knee. And I'm like, I know, but I have this random bulge. I've had three different testing done. Nobody knows what it is. CT, ultrasound, EMG to test nerve function. He looked at the CT and he said, you're right. It's way bigger than I expected. And then you know what happened? He went in. It was all a part of the same thing, took it out. And I'm like, I don't mind having scars. I do not want to have a random bulge behind my knee if you can fix it. So he fixed that for me, and I'm doing really well after that surgery.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's so great. And because you have rods in your back, right? I was,
I did. I
you,
did, but they
oh,
started breaking.
oh, one
Um,
more thing.
I think people think that rods are indestructible, but they're not. They're usually titanium and mixed with some sort of alloy like aluminum because they have to be soft enough to manipulate in the body. And I always compare myself to Forrest Gump. I'm like, well, a year after I got married, so 2 years after my crash, the left one broke first, and that was extremely painful. So he's like, well, your spine has a 20% chance of collapsing, so we're not going to take the rods out. Because I had asked, I was like, you just take them out. So he put in a longer rod. So I had to recover from that. The next year, the right one broke, but it didn't snap, and they couldn't see it on the x-ray. And I'm like, I know it's broken. So I just begged God, I'm like, please let it just physically make the sound, the breakage sound, so I know it's broken. It happened while I was like squatting to put my clothes on because I can't stand and like put clothes on. It's like so difficult. It broke, and I said, can you take the rods out? And he said, well, I have to go in front of a board. It's a 10% chance now because your spine is healed very well, but your spine still could collapse because when we fixed you without putting rods in and fusing your spine was like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. I lost more than 60% of my height of my L5 vertebrae. 60%.
Oh,
And then my nerves were mangled, is what Dr. Sobolski, my neurosurgeon, says. And he's like, Erin, the only when I looked at you, I've never seen an injury to all three layers of the spine before, the front, the middle, the back, and the nerves. He's like, I literally had to makeshift a way to close because your dura was ripped. And so the liquid that protects your spine had come out. And then I could see it and I could see your nerves roots. They were floating. He said, but the one confidence I had was that none of the nerves were severed. And he's like, so you're the miracle patient of my career in terms of spinal injuries. He's like, there's no way. Like, there's no way that what I saw in that OR equates to today. But he's also a very spiritual man. And he was a best friend of my aunt. So that's how I got transferred to the second hospital because they wanted to do the first laparotomy and then the next day do a 8 to 12 hour spinal surgery. And my mom's like, she barely made it out of the first surgery and you're going to flip her over like a pancake and do an 8 to 12 hour. She won't make it. So they had me transferred and he did the surgery. And he's like a 30-year veteran. He worked in the Vietnam War. And he's like, Erin, I've never seen a worse spinal injury except for during my days in the Vietnam War. And I said, well, why? Is that because their spines were blown up? And he said, basically. So I
yeah,
got the rods out. End of
good.
story for that.
Yeah.
And I'm fine. I think I was like Forrest Gump. I didn't need the bracing anymore, the rods. And so my body just kept breaking them.
Well, excellent. I know you still must be living with pain.
I do.
Right?
It's
Yeah.
I have a great chiropractor. I'm not allowed to be manually manipulated, but she has what's called an activator. And so my pelvis is off kilter. And anytime it's off kilter, I can't sleep. I can't lay down. I
Mm.
have horrible pain, specifically on the right side from the right rod, I think, when that broke. So she keeps me good. She does the activator. I also have chronic neck pain because I have a herniated disc. I have a lot of nerve pain, but luckily I was pretty debilitated the first year. But I do a lot of homeopathy, holistic nutritional supplements for like
Mm.
nutritional balancing, and that's helped me tremendously. So I've done a lot of things like that to support my body. And so therefore, even though I have pain, it's very manageable now, unlike before. And there are times when my pelvis is out of alignment, or if I'm like, I can never sit in the back of the plane. I literally will cry. I'm in so much pain and I have to sleep on a certain type of bed. I basically just have to manage it. I sleep with a medical massager for my neuropathy because I get tingling, which is pretty chronic. So I manage that with other supplements too. I have my routine down and that works for me. And so my husband knows like if I need special accommodations or if I can only walk so far or like standing is really hard. So like when we went to vote, I was like in a lot of pelvic pain standing there for 10, 15 minutes because I have a lot of pudendal pain, which is again not normal. They didn't even know what it was, but it's basically the lower sacral nerve. And so it feels like, okay, can I just be slightly graphic? You can always cut this out. It feels like a scorpion in my butt sometimes. Like it feels
Oh,
like shocks of pain like all in my pelvis. And so I have to be very careful about even when I ride in the car, I'm like Miss Daisy, my husband drives me everywhere. I'll like lean the seat very far back. Yeah, so I have my ways. So I do have chronic pain, but I do my best not to let that stop me. And I just have my things. I just pack my supplies and I have my emergency meds too, because I was able to wean myself off of all narcotics and all
Wow.
even gabapentin because that was also you take a drug to help you and then it causes other side effects.
Yeah.
So I don't like to be reliant on pills. If you need them, take them. So I have them. I have my arsenal of pills just in case. And I take them when I need them. Like when I get sick with a virus, I was sick last week. And this is one thing people don't understand. Being sick is awful, right? Well, imagine you had a spinal cord injury and your nerves, they flare up and it literally feels like I'm being stabbed. So ibuprofen doesn't really help.
Yeah,
So,
really.
I have medication to help with that during those times, but it's more far and few between than it was before.
How excellent. I just am so in awe of how you've gone through all of this. 10 and a half years it's been, weaning yourself off taking the narcotics. I mean, if they're there if you need them, but to be able to do that, the strength that it would take and how it allows you to be healthier and just more in control of yourself and doing all the good that you're doing. Time is not our friend right now because we have to wrap up. But I'm
Absolutely.
so in awe of you.
Thank you.
Reading your story was one thing, talking with you, and I look forward then to the documentary. And
Thank
for
you.
people to be able to find out more, they could go to MAD, right?
About Mad or about the documentary?
Let's do each.
Okay. So yes, so MAD, I believe it's mad.org.
Okay.
So there's a lot of statistics on there because I know you're in Washington State, right?
Yes.
So there's a lot of statistics on there about, how drunk driving has increased by 11% since 2023. So they can go to that website. They can look up the MAD Summer Safe campaign that wants to keep people safe, including teens. There's parenting handbooks. So they can go to mad.org and get all of that great stuff to help themselves. In terms of the documentary, we just put up another website. So you can go to miraclepatient.com or peeingisoverratedthefilm.com. There's one glitch we're trying to fix with the website, but I'm very happy that we finally revamped it. So we're wrapping up filming this year. We have an editor, and then the goal would be to submit it to film festivals and see what
Yes.
happens and
Yes.
share it, to churches or whoever. But yeah,
And the general public, because
yes.
yes, the story, your story needs to be told. It means so much in terms of resiliency, power of prayer, inner strength, family strength, that sort of thing.
So I love that you see my story. Another cool thing is we're going to DC with MAD in September to advocate for the HALT law, which is to basically, the law's already in place and they've directed NHTSA to install drunk driving, passive drunk driving technology in every car. So it'd be just like a seatbelt. It would be passive so you don't know it's there, but it would prevent people from drinking and driving. And it's not going to disable you. The car will still start. You just won't be able to drive the car, which would be wonderful. And so I'm actually having my videographer fly out there with me because this is such an important moment in history. Just like
Yes.
seatbelts were, they save lives, and the passive drunk driving technology, which is not going to infringe on people's privacies, no matter what you hear about it, that's just not true. This is such an important thing that could save 10,000 lives a year and prevent people like me from being injured. And I'm just so excited to be a part of that. And I'm like, I need to have a piece of that in my documentary because MAD and other organizations are doing so much to get drunk drivers off the road. And
Yes.
it's important. Lives are at stake.
Yes. And you've survived for a reason because
Thank
they
you.
thought you shouldn't have, but you have. So you're making every moment of this precious life count, I feel.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
do. Life can be hard. Adulting is hard, but you have to make the most of it. I've always been a kind of an eternal optimist. I see the glass half full, and even when it's hard, I think about what the guy from Titanic, he basically said, life is a gift and I don't intend on wasting it. And I've always remember that quote, and that's kind of my motto.
Well, it's just been so wonderful to connect with you, Erin. I'm in awe of you, and I appreciate all the work that you're doing to make a difference for other people and their life. And I think it comes back to you that you're as radiant as you are. So thank you for your time today. It's been wonderful to connect.
It's been so wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here this morning to meet these amazing guests. As it is Father's Day, I hope you, Dad in particular, found a special message meaningful to you that will make life just that much better. Please check the station's website for the podcasts for more information about these guests, and please share the stories with your family and friends. I'm Kate Daniels. If you'd like to connect with me, simply send me an email, katedaniels@hubbardradio.com. And please have an awesome day.
Thank you for listening to Inspirational Women. Tune in every Sunday morning at this time to hear about those truly empowering the Northwest community, all for the greater good. Sunday Morning Magazine and Inspirational Women are a public service of Hubbard Radio Seattle.